often are a lack of like working examples that someone knows. It doesn't always require then answering those through your analysis. I typically don't recommend.
Welcome everyone to the Data Talk with Doers, the podcast that dwells deep into the world of data science and analytics. I'm your host Neema, and today we have an incredible guest joining us. Please welcome Matt Mike, a data analyst at Iridium, founder of the Data Point newsletter, and a talented writer on Medium. Matt's passion for data extends beyond his professional endeavors. As a social media influencer, he has an impressive following of 38K on LinkedIn. In his dedication to empowering others, he recently launched his ebook, the Data Portfolio Guidebook, a valuable resource that assists individuals with non tech background in making a successful transition into the world of data. Matt generously provides career coaching to aspiring data analysts. So it's my absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Matt. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Nina.
Great. So, Matt, let's get started. So, could you please share some of a background bit about yourself and how you started your data analytics journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I always love to share my story as someone who doesn't come from a tech background. Um, so I graduated college in 2015 with an English degree. Um, so my plan after college was to become a teacher, which I did. I taught for a couple years, got into administration, was kind of on this teaching route, and then just realized that um, it wasn't for me. There was more that I wanted to do, but I wasn't quite sure what. That ended up, moving me towards a B2B sales role as the next step in my career journey. Um, that definitely wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. It was really rough. I only did it for about 6 months. I'm not a sales guy. Um, After that, I found like a corporate job doing back office business operations, which was like billing and accounts receivable type work. Um, that I actually enjoyed for a little while. So I did that for a couple of years, moved into leadership there as a supervisor. Um, and that was where I began to work more deeply with tools like Excel, which, like every company uses Excel, not a big deal. But at the start, at the start of 2020, so really just last year, I kind of had a desire to upskill and to just get better at technical tools, primarily Excel to start with, just to get better in my role to provide more value to the company. Um, and so I started implementing a lot of what I was learning online into my role and making Excel sheets that were a little more analytically driven, charts and fancy tools and whatnot. And that kind of launched me into discovering tools like Tableau and Power BI. Power BI, I was actually able to download within my company and use with my team. And then a business analyst role came up in my company. I didn't know too much about analytics at the time that came up, and I applied for it and I didn't get it. But that launched me into like looking online more for like what an analyst actually is. And that's when I discovered the realm of LinkedIn data content. The whole world was open to me. Um, and I was following people like Ian Kloshowicz, Annie Nelson, Jess Ramos, and started to figure out like the path I actually needed to take to get to an analyst role. So around that time, I was actually on paternity leave. I had my first child, and I kind of took that as an opportunity to go really hard with upskilling. I started learning tools like SQL, getting deeper and stuff like Tableau and Power BI, deeper with Excel too, and developed a portfolio and all that, and found a job within the time I was on paternity leave. And my wife and I had an agreement with that. We were on the same page because obviously it came with some big sacrifices for my time, but it was just such a good opportunity to really invest a lot of that time into having a career transition. So I got my first role as a business analyst. Um, was there for close to a year. Now I'm at Iridium as a data analyst, and yeah, around the time I got my first job is when I started creating content on LinkedIn too, and I've stuck with that ever since. So that's my journey. That's what brings me here today.
Great, great. That was a great journey, Mike. I feel the journey that you had, it's kind of like how the universe is directing you to where you have to be. So that's what I felt when I hear to your story. So, so the next I would like to ask is, in your experience as a career coach, I've seen a lot of your LinkedIn posts. What are some of the common challenges or misconceptions that individuals face when transitioning into data field, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So a lot of what I try to focus on typically is helping those who don't come from a tech background, like myself. But some of this applies to can apply to everyone. But especially for those breaking into the field, primarily those without a tech background, the biggest things I see are the biggest deficits often are a lack of like working examples that someone knows the subject matter that they claim to know. So i.e. having a portfolio. When I first started creating content, a lot of my content was focused on emphasizing the importance of having a portfolio. It's still something I talk about often, though, because that was something that really helped me to get my first job. And I think anyone who is new to the field doesn't have experience, even those who are early in the field. So I think if you have less than maybe 3 years of experience, leaning on a portfolio is really important. Having some quality projects, having a portfolio. A lot of people don't even have one, so it's a great idea to just have one to begin with, and leveraging that in place of experience. I think the second thing would probably be people who undermine their past experience. So even if we haven't been analysts in the past, you can frame just about any job through an analytical lens. So if you're still in the process of transitioning, I often encourage people to think about the work that they're doing and try to approach it more analytically. That's what I did. And I tried to implement certain tools. Some people may have the opportunity or capability to implement technical tools in their work. Some people maybe not, but I've seen even people with blue collar jobs working in a factory, or even teachers just use Excel personally to track data, or sometimes they're able to implement Excel at their job. And that's a good start because you could track data with that and then try to boost performance in some way within the company, or maybe just your personal workload, but trying to find ways to use data in your role, whatever that role is, in developing insights. So again, even if you don't have an analytical job, you could do analytical work within any job. Some people are doing it without realizing it. Some people don't do it, but there's opportunities for them to do it if they really wanted to and really put the effort in or looked for it. So those would be the two things I would say primarily.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Matt. Like understanding like trying to apply analytics in the present job is a great way to start or transition to a data analytics space. So coming forward with the question of portfolio, building a strong portfolio is definitely a crucial thing in today's time. And you have an ebook, right? The Data Portfolio Guidebook. So could you provide some tips on how to identify the right set of portfolio projects? Because we don't want to waste time on the projects that are not recognizable or catchy for the recruiters, right? So, what points do you would like to give?
That's true, but I do think that any project that is well put together can work. I know people who've gotten um, great jobs at well-known tech companies just using data sets where they're like analyzing NFL injuries and stuff like that. So it doesn't always, in my experience or from what I've seen and even those that I've talked to, it doesn't always require a data set specific to the industry you're looking for. Like if you're looking for a marketing analyst job, you don't necessarily need to use marketing data in your projects. It would certainly help. I spoke to someone just the other day who is wanting to be a public health analyst. Now, I'm sure there's lots of government data they can use to create a project that is it probably more closely aligns with what they're trying to do. So if you can do it, you should. But even having a mix of fun projects and really serious projects could work. I recommend people have anywhere from 3 to 5 projects. The main thing is just having every skill represented in a project. And if you want to overlap, you can, or have multiple projects for one skill, you can. So I think having if you want to have a range of different data sets between projects, that's fine too. But there's tons of data online, Kaggle, government websites for, a lot of countries will have public data that they post online. There's BuzzFeed's Everything repository that has a lot of great stuff on there too. The Humanitarian Data Exchange. I mean, between all these websites, there's just tons of stuff that you can find. I think the most important is finding a data set that you care about so that you can put a lot of energy into it. Because in interviews, if the hiring manager, whoever's interviewing, wants to dive into your portfolio within the interview, a common question that's often asked is, tell me about a project that excited you, or tell me about, this project looks interesting, tell me about it. So if you really were interested in the data, you'll be able to talk about it in greater detail, or maybe with more enthusiasm. That's another reason why sometimes using the same data set for multiple projects can work. And I've seen that work for people in the past too. Say you have, like the World Happiness Report data or something like that, and you use that to create a Tableau project, but you also used it to do like an R project or some SQL analysis. I think that's perfectly fine too. The main thing I think is how you approach the project. Not just creating a project that looks up, just random insights and throws them all on a dashboard, but actually going into it, trying to answer a specific question or a specific set of questions, and then answering those through your analysis and talking about it in your project summary or project write-up. I think that's probably more important. But, to go back to the original question, yeah, if you have data that is unique to a specific industry that you want to break into, that certainly helps. Not everyone always has a specific domain that they're targeting. So, it could be a little harder for some to do that. But if you can niche down on a project, it's certainly not a bad idea.
So, with respect to networking, right? Networking is often crucial for a job process. And what are some of the ways for individuals to connect with industry professionals and expand their network within data community?
Yeah, so expanding your network. I'm a little biased, but I think LinkedIn is the best place to do that, hands down. Just because it's such a welcoming environment, and it's so much more. It's so much more connection focused than places like maybe Instagram or TikTok. Those are great, in my experience, great places for content, but not as great for connection building. And if connection is what someone's looking for, I think LinkedIn is the place to be. And I think the best way to do that, like if someone was just starting, like they just created their LinkedIn account, they want to break into data, they're wondering how to connect with other folks. What I would do is I would start content creators that you really like, and just commenting on their posts regularly, kind of being like a regular audience member in the comment thread. Because what that does is it does break the ice between you and the creator, but you'll find that you start to see the same faces in there too. So not just commenting, but even like replying to comments, just really breaking the ice by being in the comment threads. Like if you're following a particular person, especially someone who is not like a mega creator who has multiple hundreds of thousands of followers and maybe doesn't have time to get to all of their comments. Maybe like a sub 100K person, or even sub 50K follower person, that they're probably going to have more time to be in their comments then. There's just more engagement typically. So I think just engaging in posts, replying to comments. And when you break the ice with different people who are also engaging in those posts, the posts are almost like a community forum. Um, then that kind of opens the door for, if you were to message them to get to know them a layer deeper, the ice is already broken. I know just for me personally, when people who, I have a lot of engagement with in the news feed or in posts, whether it's mine or someone else's, when they message me, they're familiar to me. I'm like, oh yeah, like that's Johnny. He's always I'm always seeing him around the LinkedIn dataverse, and I'm much more inclined to want to have a more meaningful connection with him. So it's kind of a long-term approach. I typically don't recommend just the spray and pray strategy for connection building. When people just send out a copy and pasted message to 100 different people on LinkedIn asking to have a coffee chat or for general advice, I don't think it works pretty well. I think you can't back from as many people. But if you take the long-term approach of really being involved in the community, whether that's strictly just engaging or even creating your own content, sharing about your own journey, you're going to have a way higher success rate with building actual connections, like meaningful connections. This is what I did, especially in the beginning of my journey. And I was able to connect with quite a few people that I still keep in touch with today and talk to often. People that I would consider actual friends. They're not just, at this point, they're not just connections on LinkedIn. They're actual friends. Some of them are even like text. So I think it's a long-term approach, but you have to think long-term with this kind of thing if you want to have a quality job hunting experience. So that would 100% be my recommendation to anyone.
So, as a successful data analyst and a writer, you have built a significant following on LinkedIn. How has social media played a role in your career and personal branding? And what advice do you give to data professionals looking to leverage the social media platforms for a better professionalism?
Yeah, another great question. Um, well, I think my presence on LinkedIn has been really helpful to my career, not always in a completely direct sense. Like, I haven't been one of those people who, I post something, it goes viral, I get 10 companies reach out to me, and one of them offers me a job. Now, I do see that happen to people. 100% can happen. Um, Even people who, it doesn't always have to be a viral post, but I see a lot of people who get jobs um, directly or indirectly from their posting. So for me, both of the jobs I've held in data, they weren't they didn't come about. The opportunity didn't come about as a result of posting. Um, the second one, however, it was inbound, but it wasn't because someone found me on LinkedIn. Is just like they saw an application and reached out to me for like a different job. Um, but the LinkedIn presence, once they discovered that, did kind of impress them. So it kind of helped in an indirect way. But I think for myself, where more of the value has been, it's kind of like I mentioned just before this, to the connections that I've built. I firmly believe that my growth as a data analyst has grown exponentially, or increased exponentially as a result of the connections that I have with people who are further ahead in their career than me, at the same place in their career as me, or even people that I help who are behind me in their career journey. Has given me so much perspective and helped me to see what's normal, what's not, what to expect, um, and the kinds of things that I should be doing are the things that I should be learning. Um, and then just as someone who creates content too, uh, a lot of critical thinking goes into that sometimes. And so I reinforce the things that I've learned by writing about it, by posting about it. Um, I think uh, to spit out a corny Disney Tarzan quote, uh, in teaching or in learning, you will teach, and in teaching, you will learn. That's always stuck with me because, like, I really do like when I try to teach stuff, it helps me to learn it better. Um, so I know that I've grown as a data analyst. But with that said, like I mentioned, I still see a lot of people who do get jobs as a result of their activity on LinkedIn, like, meaning posting and things like that. I just don't think that should always be someone's like primary expectation when they go into having a LinkedIn presence. I thought that was going to be the case when I started. That was the original reason I started posting, was job security. But even, just under 40,000 followers later, my inbox is not full of recruiters offering me jobs. So to manage people's expectations, it's rare, but it can happen. Um, but to wrap up my response, I think more of the value in having a LinkedIn presence, especially for myself, has been in the sense of community and what I've learned as a data analyst through my
Okay.
engagement.
So, in an unprecedented times, like we see a lot of recessions happening across the world. So, what advice do you give give job seekers looking to stand out in the this competitive field? How can they effectively market their skills and experience?
hmm Yeah, it's certainly a competitive field, and it is a tough field to stand out in, to be perfectly honest, because of how competitive it is. Um, but I do think that there's a few things that help. Having a LinkedIn presence is one of them. Like I mentioned, some people do get jobs as a result, a direct result of their engagement on social media. But other people get jobs through connections. Um, I've also known a number of people who've um, been connected with, someone at a company, like the typical thing, and reached out to them and kind of gotten a referral. Um, when I was job hunting, um, last year, as I was like kind of closing in on my first year as a data analyst, I had a connection within a company that was hiring. And I got pulled to like the top of the list because of who I knew. It was a small data team, it was a startup. And long story short, I did a few interviews. They were just about to hire me. They vocalized that, but at the last second, they decided that they were going in a different direction with their hiring. So instead of hiring another data analyst, they hired a part-time data engineer. They just went a totally different direction. So it had nothing to do with me personally, but I share that as an experience of like where a connection has actually helped me to be considered for a role. So going back to one of our earlier questions, connection building can really help you stand out because you can land referrals. Even if you already have experience as a data analyst, that connection pool can help you get a job after that. So I knew someone who they got laid off. Lots of people are getting laid off, these days, and they found a job within a few weeks because they got so many referrals from connections. So that's another way to kind of have an edge on the job market. But someone who's just kind of going in cold or cold applying and things like that, which can definitely work too, and has worked for me. Standing out just with the quality of your work. So having a portfolio, again, having quality projects, and not just having projects, but having like a project landing page, which is something that my ebook talks a lot about. Um, and really leaning into that as a young data professional or an aspiring data professional. So there's lots of ways that LinkedIn could be leveraged to give you an edge on the job hunt. There's more than one benefit to being active on LinkedIn and doing a lot of even job seeking through LinkedIn. Which side note, I think it's the best platform to look for jobs too. But also, having those working examples, those projects within your resume and having a portfolio website definitely, I think, help people stand out.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of the points that you mentioned, Matt. With these rapid developments on in data analytics field and AI, how do you think should one stay up to date with the trends, and what are the effective strategies for continuous learning and professional development?
Yeah, I certainly think it's a good idea to stay on top of trends. So I think the most relevant example, probably ChatGPT. I've learned that a lot of people outside our field still don't know what ChatGPT is, or just where AI is headed. It's getting more and more popular every day, every week, so maybe more people know about it now. But I definitely think that people in the tech field or data, whatever, most people kind of are seeing where AI is going maybe sooner than some others. But again, using ChatGPT as an example, I use it in my work all the time. I think it's such a better alternative than just going somewhere like Stack Overflow or reading random forums or random Google searches. Those still have their place, and sometimes when ChatGPT can't help me, I'll go to those more traditional resources. We call them traditional now, but it's still pretty new age in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, like ChatGPT helps me a lot in my job if I'm stuck on a particular kind of query or there's some sort of field I'm trying to create and I'm not sure how. And ChatGPT is a tool in and of itself. Kind of have to know how to use it, how to prompt it, how to ask the question the right way, the kind of context to give. And you can get different answers depending on how specific your question is. So I don't want to dive too much into the example of ChatGPT. That could be its whole own discussion. But even, technical tools that we use directly in our work. So yeah, I think staying on top of the trends is a good idea. Different companies will use different tools, but there's often opportunity to implement new tools if you know how to use them into your work. So yeah, like a good example is I have a friend who they didn't use Python in their company, but he learned Python and started using it to do some pretty cool stuff in his role, and really helped him to stand out in his job. And I think he's even up for a promotion right now. So if you have the opportunity to implement new tools that the rest of the company doesn't use, that's a pretty huge opportunity in and of itself. Python isn't like this cutting edge brand new tool, but not every company uses every tool, or they may have gaps that can be filled with other technical tools. So I hope that answers your question. I think it at least answers some of your question.
Yeah, that definitely answers the question, Matt. In fact, it's a bit of a thoughtful answer that you provided. Is alongside your work at, you also founded the Data Point newsletter, right? So can you share more about this initiative and what inspired you to start this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I do have a newsletter. It's only a few months old at this point, but I've been pretty consistent with it. Really excited about it. So the primary reason I created a newsletter was to how do I put it? Like to sort of have my own platform to speak to people, like build my own community, so to speak. LinkedIn is great, Medium is great, but like I'm using their platform to speak, and if I have a newsletter, like my audience. So if I ever left LinkedIn or my account got deleted for some reason, I'd still have a way to talk to people, kind of my own community, a way to communicate with people. Um, so that was the primary reason I made it. But I'm really grateful that it's been helpful to lots of people too, and it helps me to put more in-depth content out there than you would get just from a regular post. It's like a post on steroids, and that's been really great. And I'm just seeing where it goes, just taking it week by week and watching it grow, and um, just kind of taking things as they come with that. But that has been really a really exciting endeavor for sure.
We are looking forward to it as well, Matt, on that initiatives. And another question is that I wanted to know, like, what would be your thought process if you are starting right now? Like, what would you do over if you're starting your data analytics career just now? Like, is there any changes that you're going to make, or are you going to do the same thing repetitively? Like, what would your thoughts be?
Yeah, good question. So if I was starting over today, I would probably so like I would just document everything on LinkedIn. So I didn't start creating content until like I got my job or like just before it. But if I can go back in time, I would just track the whole thing and just kind of use it as like a public diary. Like this is where I'm at. This is what I'm learning today. Um, this is where I'm at in my job hunt. See a lot of people do that, and I love it. I love the approach. Um, that's what I would do with LinkedIn. I would still create content, but just a very different focus for where I'm at. And then I would probably uh, I would probably turn to so because there's so many resources you could take, right? There's a lot of resources out there for things that you could learn, right? Um, Probably like just go on YouTube and take Alex the Analyst's free boot camp. I think that's and personally, I think that's a better alternative than to like something like the Google Analytics course, which a lot of people take it. And the reason everyone takes that is everyone does what I did when I started and had no idea where to go. I typed into Google how to become a data analyst because I had zero idea. Because it's Google's course, the first thing that pops up is the Google course. You say, oh, awesome. Now, it's not a bad route to take. I know that they're like beginner level courses, a little surfacey. So even those who take it, it's a great overview, but you're going to have to go deeper with each tool. Like it's not enough. You should take skill specific courses. But back to what I would do, I'd probably take Alex the Analyst course. And then from there, after like doing all the boot camp stuff, which, he shows you how to install tools, how to use them. He goes through some guided projects. Then I would probably turn to doing skill specific, like online courses on something like Maven Analytics. Um, there's other tools too, like DataCamp. I think if I did it all over again, I'd probably use Maven, and then that's where I would start to like dig a lot more into each tool. Of course, someone could bypass the whole YouTube stuff entirely and just go straight to Maven. I think that'd be perfectly okay. It's a fantastic platform. They're going to get you from A to Z 100%. Um, and there's other competing platforms that are great too. Um, and then as I'm going, like I would learn a skill, whatever, like SQL, and then do a project or two, build my portfolio as I go, and then once I feel like I have a pretty strong project and each of these tools, so Excel, SQL, Tableau, Power BI, then I'd start applying. Um, and again, like documenting the whole journey as I go on LinkedIn. Um, so some of that I kind of did do, but the approach that I took was I just went straight into skill specific courses, built projects after. So it wasn't too different. But yeah, a bit of a scattered answer. Sorry, but that's what I would do. So yeah, to recap, I'd probably do some free material on YouTube. Alex the Analyst is a great resource, and I would turn to a platform like Maven or Data Camp. Um, for me personally, probably Maven, and then do projects. Have a portfolio. And there's also, I mean, along the way too, probably using like SQL prep tools. There's lots out there. I think I would approach that as I'm on the actual job hunt. Once I've started applying, I would my SQL sharp, and this is something I did sharp with tools out there. Um, there's just plenty of them, and yeah,
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for sharing the resources as well. I'm sure it'll be helpful for all of the audience. And the final question is: do you have any final words of advice or encouragement to the uh, listeners today here, and as well as aspiring data analysts on a career change to this industry?
yeah, I definitely do. My best encouragement would be to not give up. Um, because it is hard, and I do see people quit, unfortunately, and yeah, it's not always going to work out for everybody. Someone might find along the way that it's not for them, and I think it's good for someone to realize that that's the case. But if that is really what you want to do, just don't give up. I mean, for some people, they get lucky and they do it in a few months. Some people it takes closer to a year. Some people it takes longer than a year. Everyone's journey is different. Not everyone is going to be like on paternity leave like I was and be able to do it like all day, every day. But before that, I mean, I was working for like 6 months, just kind of like learning the tools on my own after work, things like that. Um, and then, yeah, I have a friend who just found a job after 9 months of searching, and she was really great. It's just a tough job market. And I saw a lot of her projects top notch, but it's still hard, and it's going to be hard for most people. But I want to share an encouraging story too. So I had a coaching client that I met with, and he was at a pretty low point in his job search journey. He was getting interviews, but they weren't shaking out. He had one where he got really close, it didn't work out, and he was super discouraged. And he'd never really talked to anyone about like what he should do. And we talked, kind of developed a plan for him. I mean, literally, like a month later, he found a job. He actually just emailed me the other day that he found a job, and just just that whole experience of like getting some help from someone in the field really turned things around for him. But he was ready to give up, but he didn't, and he sought help. And sometimes um, you just got to keep looking for resources out there, whether that's having someone like review your resume or revise it, or using one of those coaching services, or talking to someone, um, like myself, who is a career coach, or just developing those connections, and continuing to upskill, continuing to listen to podcasts like this one. I mean, don't give up, and just keep going. There's tons of resources out there. Sometimes the challenge is finding the resources or finding the right ones. But if you keep applying consistently, you keep consistently honing your craft and your skills, you get that external help. Um, whether it's like getting a digital product, or working with someone to help you out a little bit. Um, just do what you can, and keep going. So don't give up. It's not easy. I think sometimes people expect it to be easier than it is, and then when it's not, they get discouraged. It's not every job field requires you to apply several hundred plus times, but in data, it often shakes out that way, and that's just the reality of it. Again, it's going to work out differently for different people, but I think it's pretty common to take a little while. So I say that because I don't want people to think that they're necessarily doing something wrong just because it's taking a while. I mean, of course, there's always something that can be improved, and sometimes when you get extra eyes on your strategy or your portfolio, your resume, it you can kind of learn the things that you should be doing that you weren't. But in general, it usually takes a little while, so you don't want to give up right away. So that would be my encouragement.
That was a powerful message out there, Matt. And don't give up. It's easy to give up, right? So that was definitely a powerful message. So that's all I have, Matt. I'm so glad to have you here to share your wisdom as well as your experience and how you are taking forward your career and your initiatives. So thanks a lot for joining, Matt. I hope it was enjoyable for you as well.
It was great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Nima. It was awesome.